G'day all, welcome back to Money in the Tank episode 66. We're back live here with you guys and bringing you all good things in terms of money and markets and economic updates. So episode 66, take two. We had a bit of an issue with the last one, so we'll get that. We had a special guest on the last one, so we'll make sure that we endeavour to get our special guest back on, most likely in the next week or two. So keep an eye out for that one. Apologies, it's been a little bit of a while since we came to you guys. But we appreciate your patience whilst we got together ourselves and our timing and got the episode up and running. So we're looking forward to bringing you a bunch of stuff today. But without further ado, we'll do a quick intro. My name's Joel Seach, Principal Advisor, Harpel FG, to the man in the orange background there.
Yep, I'm Arnie and I'm finance professional. How you going?
And the man in Singapore, Slinger, down there at the bottom.
Bang, moved over to Singapore, Brad Tabone, investor and generalist.
Mate, so well done.
The reason why, boys, that we haven't been together for the past few weeks. I'll take some of the blame.
We've had a few. Had a few reasons,
but moving over here takes a little bit of time away. So
it's all good. What's the time difference there, Brad? Is it 2 hour difference there?
2 hours before. 2 hours before. So
2 hours before.
But now we've got someone the heartbeat of singers. Got to bring in some different information over here.
That's it, mate.
Southeast Asia correspondent. Love it.
in the financial hub of the world, basically, outside of America. So
it's already pretty crazy. I mean, in terms of like the financial hub, you start hearing stuff and you're like, I don't get access to that in Australia. They're like, yes, no.
So we're looking forward to bringing you guys the Tankers today. A great episode full of all the last month's happenings, and there has been a fair bit on the go of late. So some of the key things we'll be covering off on today will be the interest rates both here and abroad and what's happening with inflation. So there's been a bit on the go there. We'll bring you some of the stuff out of China with the country garden, issues with the property market over there and a bit of deflation. We've got a terrific 50-50 at the end of the pod, so hang around for that. We've got a great Rifkin's rules, and I've got my favourite index chart to bring up today as well with the latest release there, also with the asset classes. So,
and if you want to get us at Money in the Tank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and hit the like, comment, subscribe, and the bell. Absolutely. Just wanted to get that in there, Jolie.
We love it, mate. Thank you for that. I would have missed it. So, Arnie, without further ado, onto the Bible. Here it is. Ribs. We are on Renee on success in this chapter. So, the one on the left-hand page here, page 88, is be wary of the press. They can turn on you at any time and hurt you without justification or fact. They enjoy tearing down success.
Riv was a polarizing figure, and I'm sure he would have copped a few bad articles about him in his time. Would have been on the receiving end of some pretty bad press, the poor man. So.
Yeah, and it's probably ahead of his time too, because this book was like late 90s, I reckon, and it's gotten worse.
It has
like press and social media.
I don't think any of us have really been facing the the wrath
No.
of the media. But,
probably the one thing that I'd mention, like with putting the advice out on, is when you sort of chat to clients and they hear something on the news or Sunrise or CNN or whatever, it's generally headline grabbing and fear mongering, and you've always got to read between the lines as to why they're doing what they're doing, because they don't, and I've mentioned this in the pod before, they don't make their news media or programs to be kind of normal and bland. They do it to sell things, and they're not going to get repeat viewership or repeat subscribers or watchers if they're not catching headlines and not trying to get people's attention. So if the market's ticking along well or investments are ticking along well, they're generally not going to be emphasizing or talking as much about that. But as soon as we have some red and some bloodbath and some negatives and some bear market stuff all over it. So that's why I think generally subconsciously people will hear about that more from the media. So that's probably my slant on that take in terms of media in general.
I think a character like Riv would not have done very well in the modern media environment, because if he would try to retort, they just would have picked it up and run with it and just kept bombarding him.
Yeah, yep, I hear. So there we go. So on to the episode at hand today, guys. So first, I guess we start off with maybe the interest rates and what's been going on of late from the RBA and then also the Fed as well. So the RBA at the start of August was a hold. And that came off the back of, I think, inflation figures being a little bit lower than they expected. So for the listeners out there, the RBA works off a lot of different measures, but they work off expected outcome and then actual outcome. So the actual outcome was lesser than expected from an inflation rate perspective. So what then they did was all the bank economists and everyone came out and they said, well, we're not expecting the RBA to raise rates. I think it went down to like a 15% expectation of interest rate raise and an 85% hold. And then they came out, Governor Lowe, which I believe is his last meeting, last at the start of August, and then it hands over to the new lady. I forget her name now. Her name eludes me, but she'll be taking over at the start of September, or may have already taken over now for the first meeting in September. And I think the forecasts are still, I haven't seen the latest forecast, but maybe another hold. But I've seen a few pundits saying maybe one more rise. So maybe we'll start there. The Fed also had a 25 basis point rise as well, off the back of some of their data, and they're starting to sort of talk more about maybe that's the end of it for them. But yeah, we might throw to Arnie first to sort of get any thoughts and feelings around around the interest rate environment that we've seen at the moment in the RBA, and then across overseas to the US and the Fed.
Yeah, Michelle Bullock is the new governor, the ninth RBA governor.
Sorry, Michelle, for missing your name there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll be very familiar with it as time goes on. But a couple of days ago, Governor Lowe, I think in his last session with Parliament while he is still the governor, I don't know if he did this as a bit of a trying to claim victory before he leaves, but he said to Parliament that the worst is over of inflation for Australia specifically. Which is well, yeah. I mean, he could have said that, but I think it's important that he gave the context that he's talking about Australia, because looking at America's numbers, America has had good numbers, and I think America's rate went down to 3%, which is the lowest it's been in a while. Since it hit its peak of 9.1. Back whenever that was, I forget exactly when that was, when it hit 9.1. But I know there's a few indicators over there that it might be reinflating. So nothing is really easing over there. The data's lagging. I don't know. Just having a bit of a look anecdotally, you can sort of see that a wage price spiral might be in effect, and cost of living is going up, rent and food and energy and all that isn't coming off. And energy is a massive one as well as housing. So what are my thoughts about it? I don't think we're at the end of this by any stretch of the imagination. I think we're probably going to see it reinflate in different various parts of the world, and they're going to need to hike or at least maintain this level of interest rates for a while, because it's not a quick fix. So a hike might not be the appropriate measure, but maintaining this level for a while might be the appropriate measure. So that's what I've got to say on the RBA and America, but a bit more to say on China. But I'll go to Brad first.
Yeah, I mean, I think both countries are showing that there is still rises in CPI. I mean, Australia also had a slight rise in CPI, and I think America was huge around housing. I think it was 9% rise in housing. I know that energy is coming back up because Biden asked Saudis again to increase the flow rate for OPEC or for Saudis, and they said no once again. And also the American strategic reserves are actually down at record low levels since 1981, I think it is now. So I think every day Biden's been under the Biden administration, they've been releasing about a million barrels of oil, and that's what's been keeping energy prices around the $80 US mark. But as they head towards the end of the 2024 presidency, I think there's a bit of a game going on at the geopolitical level between the Saudis and Russia, trying to kind of not necessarily want Biden in there in 2024, and so going to put as much pressure as possible on, because I mean they know that America votes with gas prices. I mean, it was crazy living over there and seeing people going nuts about a $6 gallon or $7 gallon, which works out to be about $1 $50, $1.70 a litre, like to the Texans that hit $5 a gallon, which was like $1.25. It was like the end of the world. And then literally they vote with their gas, and so don't underestimate how the pressure that Saudi Arabia is putting on the Biden administration at the moment, and the strategic reserves, they can't really continue that for another year and a bit. So they don't actually have enough oil, plus what they actually need to keep for their minimum strategic reserves. So that's the US and on that thing. I mean, the interesting bit is obviously the raise in America and the non-raise in Australia. Hopefully helps our economy a little bit with our exports, because I think we're down to about 65 US cents now, 64 US cents. I saw a doom
And
and gloom article.
just for the listeners out there, Brad, do you want to explain to the viewers, how kind of the dollar helps exports and imports, or impacts imports, helps exports?
Basically, a number of variables affect the FX rate between two countries. The demand for the currency being obviously the ultimate one, but there's obviously various demands of currency, i.e., buying the Australian dollar to buy contracts for our ore or our coal, etc., which is usually what they kind of buy our money for. Another reason why people change their money into a currency is due to the stability of that currency and also the rates, so the return on investment that you get for that. So if America's raising their rates by 400 points and we've only raised our rates by 300 points, it's numbers. So that's 4 bases, so 4%, 3%. Generally, the savings accounts or return deposits or the bond rates, etc., that you get in those countries enable you to get a higher return on your investment. So at the moment, America's raised their rate more than Australia, and so kind of their government bonds and the rest of it are more attractive at the moment. It's a good place to put your money for long term.
I guess just specifically, with exports, when our dollar's lower, it makes us cheaper to buy
so
goods
same
from.
product. Yeah. So if we're at 70 cents and they need to buy a ton of iron ore at say $200, they used to have to change over. Let's just assume 200 Australian, so 200 US. In Australian dollars, they used to have to change over 10, 15, 20% more than they do at the moment, 10% more. But vice versa. If we're making investments into, impacts the other way though.
The imports.
Because I know there's some people on this pod that are maybe making investments in a company that is US based, and that investment now costs 7% more than it did about a month ago. You have to pay in US dollars. Unfortunately. So it has a two-way effect, but it does help. Australia is a big exporting country, and so hopefully helps out a little bit on that front. But yeah, I mean, where do we see inflation going from here? Really quickly, I agree with Arnie. I don't think, I said from the start, I think this will be a prolonged, I think they'll hold rates for a bit, and they'll be forced to because of economic reasons and the cries of the public, and then we're going to see it pop up in different places. Energy is going to be one that is going to fly. I don't mark my words. No, what's the word? No vice, generally nature, all that kind of stuff. But
general nature.
There's been a massive underinvestment in energy. I think we covered it on one of the oil specials. And I think what's going on in the world at the moment, I think energy prices are going to continue to spike. Be interesting to see what happens in housing in Australia with immigration and demand and supply issues. And it's going to be still anyone knows. So
I think the big issues for the government and the RBA are the two things they don't seem to have much of a handle of and haven't put enough into is housing affordability and housing in Australia and energy, as you alluded to. So they're the two things that might keep inflation hovering around for a while or hanging around higher than it may have been if those things were possibly handled better.
And unfortunately, really quickly, with oil, just so everyone understands, when energy and oil prices go up, it affects everything because everything that we buy is transported, and every transport method requires energy. And so when energy prices go up, the cost to actually get that good to where it needs to go to goes up. So it doesn't matter if it's food, it's white goods, whatever, they all will go up based on energy prices. So watch this space.
maybe someone can Google in the background there shipping containers to, from Shanghai to the US, because I read something the other day they might have started to
Down
be coming
30%.
down again. Yeah, so that's opened up maybe on supply lines as well. So that would help. I think that's helped some companies' profits too, and they were expecting shipping costs to be higher, and they've come down, and that's possibly to do with there's some supply chain opening up as well.
I've actually got those stats for the next article. The next combo job.
Yeah, cool. And where do we reckon? So we won't ruin your surprise there, Brad. And where do we think? The RBA is going to get to? I've probably got an alternate view for you guys. I think we're at 4.1 now, aren't we? I reckon the Fed might have a little bit more. The RBA may not, but they may not also want to fall behind too much from the rest of the world. So, because you also have that issue of a two-speed economy occurring with, people that, I think it's around 35-40% in Australia that don't have a mortgage or aren't impacted by rate rises adversely, but they're positively impacted, where they're going to get rates of return on money and whatnot. So that sort of then adds to inflation the other way. So it's a fine line. It's a real fine line. So I wouldn't be surprised if they hold for the rest of the year and see how the year pans out, would be my guess. Where do you guys think? Domestically, and Fed Fed might have different issues. Fed might be one or two more, but we'll see. Your guys' thoughts?
I think we're getting to that point now where, and it's always been the way, like they are somewhat coupled. The RBA and every other central bank is somewhat coupled to the America's Federal Reserve. So, and if our dollar gets too weak, they don't want it to get too weak. I think it's hovering in the range where they still find it acceptable. But if the Federal Reserve in America were to hike, say, another 50 basis points, I could see our RBA going another 25.
Yeah,
just to keep connection on those prices. I don't think it's to do with our domestic inflation situation. It's just the currency. That's how I see it.
I don't want to see the dollar getting too weak.
I don't know much about the incoming job now.
Shelley.
Sorry.
Shelley.
But I'm probably of the view that what we should do versus what we will do, I think we will only go up another 25, 50 basis points where we are today. I don't think that's what we should do. But yeah, I think we have to stay in touch with the world. Otherwise, there was an article that came out, it got sent about 5 times. But if people did see, and I don't know if anyone saw this, but it was like Australian dollar due to slowdown in China, which we'll talk about. And obviously our Reserve Bank lagging the rest of the world will hit 40s. Like settle down.
There's no way.
Hit 40s.
But
no way. There's no way they'll let it happen. But yeah, there is downward. At least when they start writing articles like that, that there's a little bit of blood in the air in terms of people's fears about where our dollar's going. So I reckon we will raise another 25, 50 basis points from where we are right now.
One off the cuff, bro. Where's the Singaporean rate at the moment? What are they? And are they?
I know they're not as high as us at all.
No.
Let's have a look. Right. Because they have the ability, being a small island, so they are.
Singapore dollar is buying. It's buying 0.74. Is that what you're asking, Joel?
No, interest rate. I think he was asking. What were you asking?
Yeah, interest rate. I think the
interest rate in Singapore decreased to 3.49% in August 2023.
3.9 was it? Sorry.
3.49.
3.49. Okay, yeah, and I think the Aussie dollar when I was there back in May, we were getting 85 cents to every.
It's gone down even further.
Yeah. Okay.
It hurts. Again. Actually, we're at 88. It's come down a little bit. But we were. For I've traveled Singapore for about 40 times, and my whole life except for the last couple of times, we've always been $30, $20. It's like.
Gone under, yeah.
No, China.
There you go, on to China. So,
China.
We're keen to hear your thoughts as well, guys. So, any listeners out there, if you've got any thoughts about interest rates or questions around it or where you think it's going, keen to hear your thoughts. Any topics you want us to discuss around that as well. More than happy to dig into it. But, let's kick on to China now because there's been a bit of news happening out of China with some property news and some inflation news as well, or deflation news on the other hand.
Some shipping news as well.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
just like the headline rate was like the headline grab was that China has officially started deflating because the consumer price index fell by 3% compared to 2022 at the same time, and then
for the pod, what is deflation?
Deflation is when you see the economy contract. So in their consumer price index specifically, but also their producer
going
price
down instead of up.
That's right. But the producer price index also fell by 4.4%. So it's the first time both of those figures have been negative for China since November 2020.
And just my hand up. Just remember
yeah.
all stats in China generally put a rosy
rose-colored glasses on.
Rose-colored glasses on. And so when they came out saying, negative birth rate for the first time ever, the first time was about 6-7 years ago. They're just now saying it. So
I mean, the narrative was, and not just from China, was that when zero COVID ended, they were going to roar back to life. Everyone was going to spend all the money they've been saving. The economy was going to be superheated. Oh yeah, it was going to go bonkers, right? And they had guided. China had guided for a modest growth rate in 2023 of 5%. So far through the first half of the year, they're growing at 5.5, their GDP. So they're getting there, but with deflation now sort of ticking over, or I guess the index is falling. Will they still get to 5.5 or 5? We'll see. So it's funny that you mentioned, like, this is sort of an aside. It's related, and you and I were talking about it before, but funny you mentioned the rose-colored glasses, because a mate of mine sent me an article the other day saying that whatever their labor department is in China has stopped reporting the youth unemployment rate. So 16-year-olds, 24-year-olds, they just stopped reporting it. And the last time, I think you said the last time it was reported was in June, and it was sitting at like 21.3% unemployed in that age range. So they definitely.
But again, a scholar out of the Shanghai University, Chinese scholar, so it's not international people throwing shade on China. This is just a scholar from within. I'm sure he's in a bit of trouble at the moment. He did his own research, and he puts his figures monthly against the Chinese. His last figure against the 21 was 46.5.
He said 46.5. Wow. Okay. So there you go.
Yeah,
so
maybe youth unemployment 46. It's a huge issue at the moment in China. I've got a couple of friends over there, and there's a massive issue with people going from university into jobs at the moment.
And I guess for the listeners out there, typically with deflation, it's not a good thing. It's the opposite of inflation, because it's bad for a nation. So it can potentially signal a downturn or recession or depression. I guess deflation, falling prices, or essentially falling prices, lead to just lower consumer spending in general. So it's a major component of issues with economic growth. And then, companies then, respond in layoffs or slowing down production, salary reduction. There's all bad things that come with deflation. So that's why, generally in Australia, for example, they've always tried to strive for 2 to 3% inflation, because it's sort of a happy medium. It's not too much, it's not too little. It's just the right touch they feel. Right. Whether that's up for debate, 2 to 3, they spoke about maybe increasing that to 2.5 to 3.5. But Arnie.
Yeah, the expected inflation is what you want. So 2 to 3% is just a good target to manage, because you can never manage all the inputs that go into it. But it wouldn't matter if you had an expected inflation target of 50% if everything moved in line. If wages moved in line with cost at 50% every year, we'd be dealing with large denominations of money, but things would essentially cost, comparatively the same. But like you were saying, deflation becomes a problem and the reason it's a problem is because people will hoard their money and hold their money. Because why would you buy a big purchase like a house or a car this year if you know next year it's going to be 3 to 4% cheaper? Because 3 to 4%, when you're talking big dollars, when you've got asset prices so high, it's a lot of money. It's a big saving. So just on that, like, it ties into what we have spoken about before with regard to China. We did a couple of episodes on Evergrande, which was a property developer. A lot of their issues, not the youth unemployment stuff, but a lot of the issues with their economy is stemming from the fact that China's GDP, 1/3 of it roughly, is made up of real estate. It's tied to real estate in some way, shape, or form. And so that three red line policy that curtailed the leverage there was maybe too effective. In response, we've seen Shanghai do a cut of interest rates recently. And then, they halted it towards the end of last year.
And I think they've eased some criteria on the three red line, haven't they? They've made some adjustments to it to help kind of see through the challenging cycle they're having.
I think they have. I'm not 100% sure on what they've changed, but what I was getting at was Shanghai, the federal government people have been calling for them to put some stimulus in there, because we have also covered this in the past that used to be the case that they would sort of put pressure on the local governments to take debt to stimulate the local economies, and that isn't, well, it's sort of not working as well as it once was. We don't know the official figures, but there's estimates that the size of the local government debt burden in China is somewhere between 13 trillion and 23 trillion US dollars. So that is a huge deficit that's essentially being treated like an off-balance sheet entity.
Yeah,
Brad?
And I mean, the way the government, whether it's just for understanding as well, because people may go, oh, well, the Victorian government or the Californian government collects its taxes, and that's how they fund their budget largely, and stamp duties and the rest of it. In China, the way they get money is either from the central government, giving it to them, which at the moment is not happening, is selling land. So that's the only way they actually get money. So all tax revenue goes to North, to the national. State governments actually make money out of the 99-year leases or repatriating land and selling them to developers. That's why property became such a huge part of the Chinese economy, is because to get China to hit their economic growth targets inside their province, the way to fund it was to sell land to developers. And so with a downturn in the property market, the ability to fund that the way they've always funded it is creating some headaches and also repaying that debt burden. So if you think about like a country that has got no land in it, no infrastructure in it, when you first lay that first railroad, the return on investment might be 10 times. You lay the second railroad, it's 5 times. Third railroad, still getting 3x. Fourth railroad, 2x. You start going into still good return rates of 150%. When you're laying 4 times the amount of rail than the whole world has done, you start getting some lines that aren't actually making any money or actually costing money to operate and the rest of it. So the ability to continuously build infrastructure and get a positive ROI on it inside a country is limited. Can't do it forever. And so that's what they're getting at the moment.
There was reports, and I'll throw to you in a sec, Jolie, but there was reports from some sources that I read a while ago where Xi Jinping basically came out and said in response to this that Shanghai wants to do stimulus, but they want it to be in growth areas. They want it to be in sectors that will, in the future, help China grow beyond these issues. So they don't want to, if they can help it, they don't want to focus on reinflating their real estate asset bubble, basically, if you read between the lines.
Yes, I mean, also they've got a couple of the state rail network, so it's taken on the burden of high speed rail. It's got debt of $3 or $4 trillion at the moment, and it's got a huge interest bill every year, and that's because 90% of the actual network is running at a loss. So these are the sort of things they've built for the future. They've transferred 500 million people from rural to cities. They've done a crazy job, but sometimes in the betting of these games and the gambling, some things get away from you. Sorry, Jolly.
No, I think you guys have covered off really, really well there. Some of the things you think about when it comes to having an overweight to a certain service or commodity or industry in a country is you're always at risk if something goes wrong with that area, that you're going to have big ramifications that flow onto all the other areas. So Arnie mentioning real estate being one of their biggest, one third of all industry over there, huge ramifications and flow-on effects. Same thing in Australia, where we're quite diverse, but commodities is a big thing for us. So we'll feel the pinch a bit, and we have felt the pinch from already in the currency with China not buying as much, or China slowing down and expecting that to require less Aussie dollar demand. So that's where we're seeing it here. So it will flow on to different areas. How much of an issue it'll have to China and the economy and its growth pattern over the next decade or two, we'll see. You know, I read something the other day saying that, yeah, they don't think, the US don't think China will overtake them as an economy for another decade or two now.
If ever,
and then
demographics.
Yeah, and then confidence. I think confidence has been hit with property. You know, people buying properties over there, they're not sure of it. And then you got these companies like Country Garden trying to put band-aids over gaping wounds, or say, we'll incentivize you with appliances or this or that to get them to kind of, go forward with the property purchase. So, I think they've got some issues, and we'll see where it all comes out. Honey.
Yeah, 2 points on that. Country Garden was seen as one of the more stable developers. I think it might even be the largest or second largest in China total.
Second.
And they focused on rural areas. But yeah, they're currently within the 30-day grace period on a US denominated dollar bond that they've defaulted on, have not paid. And they've got 10 more local currency ones coming up. So, and they've signaled like they're in trouble. And also just on that, I also read an article that said that Chinese households are sitting on some enormous figure, like $2.4 trillion in savings that the government has been expecting them to spend, but they're not spending, and that's sort of fueling this deflation. There's actually
scared at the moment.
Yeah, they are
can't
scared.
Put it in the stock market, can't put it in the property market.
And you can't get money out of China either. So it's sort of like
currency controls, 100%. Lastly, a couple of stats, boys. So it was 24%. The trade with the US down as of May. And officials show that exports sold by 14.5% in July compared with a year earlier, while imports dropped 12.4%. It's a big numbers.
Yeah.
Exports dropping 14.5% from 2022 and 12.4%. Because they were doing well in 2022 when the world was opening up. They were seen as like, the bosses, and then suddenly COVID. Zero COVID policy.
So I guess we'll keep an eye on the numbers coming out from China, but as Brad said there, we've got to take them with a grain of salt in terms of the numbers that they put out, because they can tend to tweak things to save face and make it look not as bad. So yeah, gently tweaking. So we'll see what occurs over there.
Any rapid fire news?
I do have rapid fire news, and actually I'll start with Tesla because it's topical. The Tesla news item the Tesla news item I put in today was that they have again cut prices in China, which is triggering a slump in auto stock. So autos across the board, not even the one, I mean, they're all exposed to China in a big way, but autos across the board are struggling because people are, not buying the cars at the same cyclical rate that they were because they're struggling, or like a situation like China, they're expecting deflation and to see the price of the car come down before they purchase it. So I would actually say, like, in my own personal opinion and general in nature, Tesla is like operating from a position of strength compared to some of the other automakers. However, it's not good. Like, you'd rather see them selling, at a, like, being a price setter rather than a price taker. So yeah, but here's the rapid fire news, boys. So I've got a few Chinese ones actually. The China Defense Ministry has said that India and them have had positive, constructive, in-depth discussions on the resolution of their remaining issues along the LAC in the Western sector. And they've also said that they have agreed to maintain peace and tranquility on the ground in those border areas. China banks have sold 1.3 trillion yuan, total forex in July. And Hawaiian Electric Industries has been cut to a junk rating. And if you have a look at the chart of that stock, boys, Hawaiian Electric has taken a huge beating because they've been linked to the fires in Hawaii. So climate issues. Yeah, in Maui. So climate issues, but potentially also issues with the infrastructure there. And that Hawaiian Electric they supply like 90% or greater than 90% of all power in Hawaii. So for them to be rated junk is huge. Go on, Brad.
Just to let you know, that's why in California, actually when we're living there, it's quite crazy. During the wildfires, they actually do rolling blackouts because the state energy company, the one that's private, they've got such bad infrastructure that they're liable if they create any more fires. And so instead of fixing their infrastructure during like hot days and during like fires, they actually switch off the infrastructure. And so in California, you actually get like your power taken away from you in one of the richest states in the world.
It's bonkers, man.
It's, mate, it is. Oh, it's an interesting
I
country.
actually, like, I saw a joke, and like, obviously, no disrespect to Hawaiians or Maui, and I feel for the troubling times they've gone through. And we, being Australians, are no strangers to, fire. Like, we understand how severe and dangerous and catastrophic it can be. But I did see someone make a joke about Hawaii and Hawaiian Electric, saying that they should rename themselves to Ukraine to get government aid through faster. Because someone ran the numbers. Like, there's actually, behind this joke, there was someone who ran the numbers and said you could fix the infrastructure for like 1/10 of the money that's been sent to the Ukraine already, just by the US administration. But because it's private, I guess they don't want to be seen propping up these private industries. So yeah, anyway.
I'm interested to actually see if it's in the if it's anything to do with fire and the Build Back Better, the $1.2 trillion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
it's
not a small amount of money spending over 10 years. I wonder if, because it is private, this is the whole thing. Because the infrastructure is private, it's not leased off the government. So, yeah, a lot of our infrastructure is actually government owned, and the private companies lease off the government, and we keep it up to a certain standard because they've privatized everything. This is the ramifications.
I think surely the suffering of your people takes precedence over not wanting to prop up an industry, or there should be some sort of regulator, or maybe they bring in a player to keep it level. But anyway, on with the rapid fire.
Jail on American politics, bro. Lobbyists.
That's true. This is the slowest rapid fire news of all time.
Yeah, not rapid. It's single shot fire at the moment. Reload.
Here we go. Reload. Shares of big Wall Street lenders fall as report says Fitch may be forced to downgrade multiple banks, including JP Morgan, which would be huge. General Motors shares are down 1.53% because Berkshire Hathaway cut their stake. Tesla, I mentioned, and Barron's, among other large financial media institutions, have reported favorably on NVIDIA and set higher price targets, and that resulted in NVIDIA doing a 10% jump in a session a couple of days ago. So, yeah, AI alive and well.
With it.
The sentiment in AI alive and well. So that's the rapid fire news, boys.
Love it. Good
you
work.
You forgot that they pulled out your boy Burry.
Oh, so you want me to talk about? I don't know what he did with China, but I do.
No, he dumped Alibaba and he dumped another one, all Chinese stock.
The latest news item I saw about Burry, and I didn't have it written down, but thank you for reminding me. Big Bad Buzzer. His 13F for Scion Asset Management came out, and he has taken a $1.6 billion put position across SPY and QQQ. So he is bet, and we don't know the strike. We don't know the strike. We don't know the expiry. It could be a hedge against his longs, but he's taken a $1.6 million short position. So, yep.
SPY and QQQ for the listeners?
They're indexes. So SPY tracks the S&P 500 and QQQ tracks the NASDAQ.
Yep. So he's betting against them. Going down. Good. Love it. Good rapid fire finish there, Arnie. Before we kick into 50-50, a couple of my favourite charts came out this week. The Vanguard 2023 index chart, love it. So hopefully you guys can see that on gallery view. And if you're listening out there, or sorry, for the listeners out there, you won't be able to see this in the podcast version. So I suggest to jump across to the.
Says leave your money in there.
Yeah, I'll suggest to jump across to the YouTube version to check out the graph that you're missing out on here. And while you're there, give us a like and subscribe as well. So yeah, the Vanguard Index chart, it comes out every year. Picture paints 1,000 words. It's one of my favorite charts, I must admit. Even though I work with numbers all the time, I love seeing imagery and love seeing how things work over time. This one here is the 30-year anniversary for it. So we're all the way back in 1993 to 30 June 2023. And we can see what is happening of $10,000 over that time. US shares were up at 176, 10%, and that's with a pretty bad year in the market last year. Australian shares 9.2 at 138, again with an average market last year. You know, time heals all wounds. The longer you're in something like this, having a bad year last year doesn't mean too much of a difference in the long term. One of the other things I saw on this was a cool video that showed if someone was adding $500 into that portfolio every month for the past 30 years. I think it's up to about $900 and something odd $1,000 of value. So compounding, if you like money, you leave it in and let it do its job. Be consistent. They're in the dot points here, as I've spoken about before. When people say, or clients say, what's going to happen next? Guarantee something will happen. There's dot points throughout history of things that occur, but the one consistent is that companies and human resolvers, they always kick forward, they always make money, they always take over, get better, and they outpace what they did previously and continue to grow. So generally nature, but one of my favorite charts that I like to see.
I love that chart.
Yeah, that's a cool chart. And the only other one here is the diagram chart. So it talks about the financial year returns for the asset classes over that period of time as well, 94 or close to 94 to 2023. So we can see here, if I zoom out a little bit, we got the Aussie shares, international shares, US shares, all the bits and pieces across the period. We can see how many times they've been the best over that period of time. We can see how many times they've been the worst. We can see the average over that period of time as well. And we can see the one that jumps out at me is cash, being the worst performer 6 times with an average at 4.3. So quite an interesting patchwork quilt, I guess you could say, here of the different asset classes that we can see over that period of time as well. And it sort of highlights your best and your worst there.
Get your money working for you, Jolly says.
Yeah, I thought generally nature, a cool chart to show the listeners out there. Jump across to YouTube, guys, and I can maybe flick the PDFs to Arnie to attach to the podcast link as well, maybe if you like, when we're posting this one up today.
Yeah, shoot me the link to the Vanguard site where you can get both of them. But you know what did stand out to me in that chart, Jolie, was that you hear a lot of talk around election time about this, like, who is a better leader for the country, America or Australian, for the market. And like, it just goes to show that it doesn't really matter who's in power. If you look at that chart again, it's all like across an index, it's up and to the right, no matter who's in power.
Yep. They'll tell you it matters, Arnie, but it really doesn't matter. You can see here Keating, Clinton, Howard, Bush, Rudd, Gillard. Rudd again, I forgot he did 2 terms. Obama, Abbott, Turnbull, Trump, Morrison, Biden, Albanese. The consistent thing over that period of time is it's generally trended upwards. There might have been some luck in there where it's had a downward period, Rudd and Bush and Obama, but there's no correlation.
Yeah, there's no correlation with the financial crisis and those guys.
They're
the ones that copped it.
Yeah. So onto the 50-50, guys. This week's 50-50 coming to you live from Facebook and Twitter X and X and Tesla with the upcoming and impending. Is it a UFC? Is it a mixed martial arts fight, or is it a boxing match?
It's MMA. I don't think it's affiliated with UFC and Dana White. I think they might have spoken to them, but I
think they've done it on their own, and they're going to donate money to charity and whatnot. And they're doing it on their own feed. So we're talking about Elon Musk versus the Zuck in a MMA fight. As to who you feel is going to win the fight and maybe what the outcome might be of the fight. I'll throw to Brad.
What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive where we get to see Zuck take on Elon in the Coliseum. When's the fight?
It's in the Coliseum, is it?
No. So this is just quick recap here before we say who we think's going to win. So I don't know if you've seen the drama, but in recent days, both Zuckerberg on his Threads app and Elon Musk on his X, formerly known as Twitter app, having a bit of a verbal stoush because there was reports that Elon said he had to go for potential surgery. Elon Musk negotiated with the Italian government to allow them to fight in the Coliseum. Italy graciously said yes. Zuckerberg declined that invitation to fight because he said he was traveling at that point in time and didn't try and reschedule it. And then he came out and said on Threads that
scared of Elon.
It was Zuck. Yeah, Zuck said no to the Coliseum. So then he went on to Threads and said something along the lines of, clearly Elon Musk is not serious about this fight. I love this sport. I'm going to train and fight people that want to fight. And when he's ready, I'm not going to say anything else about it until he's ready. So off the back of that, apparently Elon Musk had said something about do you want to do a practice match at your house? And we'll fight in your own octagon. And Zuck, basically has stayed silent on it. So my view on this is, they're both trying to make the other one look bad. But in my opinion, it sounds like Elon Musk is trying to make it happen, and Zuck is, I don't know, making excuses but trying to look like he's not.
Which probably goes against, like, because Zuck's actually trained MMA for a year. He did it last year with his, he does a goal every year, the old Zuck. And his goal last year or the year before was to train MMA. And so that over Elon's in his 50s.
If Zuck has, because I think Zuck did the BJJ training.
BJJ,
I'm pretty sure he's done some tourneys.
That's what Joel. He did his BJJ training.
If we jump into 50-50, we're not breaking everything down to an absolute science, but we appreciate the recap there. It's good to know where we're at. We're still in limbo, but if it does go ahead, I'm going to be putting my money on Zuck just due to the background of MMA. If the fight goes to the ground, which is a pretty common occurrence, it's going to go to the ground. You've got to have the man with the experience on the ground, and that's going to be Zuck.
Energy of BJJ. You're going to pick the Zuck. Arnie, you're going to pick your boy Elon?
I would have picked Elon, even if he wasn't Elon, and it wouldn't matter for me about the experience, because have you guys seen the difference in height and weight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg?
I know that Elon's got a few more kilos.
You're giving us the tail of the tape, Arnie?
Yeah, I will. Let me bring it up for you because I'm going Zuck. Sorry, I'm going Elon, but Zuckerberg is like Mark Zuckerberg height and.
Well, Brad, have you given us your prediction, Brad? While Arnie looks that up.
Yeah, I've gone the Zuck, mate.
You've gone the Zuck, yeah.
And who did you say, Jolie?
I've gone the Zuck just due to the experience on the ground. I just think if it goes to the ground, if your BJJ guy, it doesn't really matter about your size on the ground. If it hits the ground, its experience is probably going to come out.
All right, here. I'll give you the tail of the tape. So Elon Musk is 187 pounds versus Zuck's 155. I don't know what that is in kilos, by the way. Age, 52.
About 90 kilos versus what, Zuck?
155. So what's that, like 70?
70, yeah.
Age is 52 and 39, and
the difference.
Height is, so the height of Mark Zuckerberg is 175 centimeters.
Me, basically.
And Elon Musk height, I think he's 1.86, so he's over 6 foot. Or he's maybe just like 6 foot. So 6 foot 1, 6'2", basically. So yeah, so Musk is heavier and Musk is a lot taller, and I feel like no matter how good Zuckerberg's training is, unless he gets on his back, it puts him in a chokehold. Yep. Elon Musk is just going to sit on him and beat him.
But
we'll wait to see.
I can't wait to see how $300 billion fight each other. What a time to be alive.
Don't really want a great time to be alive. So let's get your thoughts, listeners, from that. Where do you think it's going to land? Probably a shout out to Snowy here. He loves the 50-50, so I'll wait to hear his input. I usually just kind of get a message with his prediction or what his thoughts are on a certain topic. He was very, very much didn't like the Seinfeld thing. He said friends all the way. But yeah, keen to hear your thoughts, listeners. I might even hit Lancey up next time I see Lancey and say, where do you think it's going to land, Lancey? Are you going with the guy with a bit of training, or are you going with the guy that owns Twitter, whatever Twitter used to be called?
If Lance says Zuckerberg, I officially changed my vote. I trust his judgment with all things fighting.
For listeners out there, Lance is our mate. It's proficient in MMA. So I once challenged Lance. I once challenged Lance to see if he could get me down in a minute and a half, and we haven't actually made it happen yet. But I still think I could stay up for a minute and a half. But anyway, once it gets to the ground, he'd probably be all over me. Cool, guys. So thanks for tuning in today, Tankers. Arnie, where can they get us at Tankers, and where can they write in their questions?
Yeah, please get us at Money in the Tank on YouTube, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I was about to say Twitter, but I got to start saying X.com. So yeah, please get us there.
It's gonna give it to you.
Love it, and we'll aim to get our special guest back on in the next week or two, guys. So that'll be a special guest in the investment space. So a really cool podcast that we did with him, and the error of the taping didn't quite eventuate. We had an issue with the error of the taping, the cloud, but we'll get him back on, and enough time has passed now. So thanks for tuning in today, Tankers. Apologies about the belated podcast. We took a little while to get it back. My beard has grown since the last one.
I've got a beard as well.
And Brad's got a beard too. So we all have beards, and we all look forward to catching up with you guys next week. Cheers, guys.
See you boys.